Well, good afternoon, everybody. See some familiar faces here. Thanks for joining the second session in the Leading Transformation track here. We have two more sessions coming up tomorrow morning. This is the second year we have created and maintained a track on leading transformation, recognizing from the Matrix perspective that that is really the next level as to how telehealth adoption, telehealth growth, really has to come from. It's the adoption of innovation. My name is Christian Monaster. I'm the board member here at the Matrix and also the founder and CEO of Ingenium Digital Health Advisors. And I'm very pleased to introduce here Mike Eppheimer. As the saying goes, people don't know how much, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I only met Mike a couple times, but I know that he cares very, very deeply about helping people to become the best version of themselves. And I love how he puts it in his own words that he loves to help individuals and teams to activate their collective gifts. And I'm like, oh, I have collective gifts. I really like that. So that's, he holds a Master's of Health Administration from George Washington University and a Bachelor of Arts in Theater and Communication, which explains probably the yes and origins. And I'm sure he'll talk about that from the University of Maryland. Prior to launching his leadership development firm that he now runs and that he called Threefold Yes, as you can see here, he held senior executive leadership roles at Christiana Care, George Washington University Hospital, and the advisory board company. And as many have you heard in the pre-conference session with Chick, right? It's about right thinking and creativity versus shutting them down. So one of those collective gifts, I think, is that we have inside us is the creativity, our ability actually to improvise, even though we may not be fledging that muscle very often. So here to help us with that, to activate our gifts, is Mike Eppheimer. Please help me join me in welcoming Mike.
All right, thanks, Christian. That was a little bit more than a short introduction, but it was still a beautiful one, so thank you so much. It's great to be here with all of you today. 4:30, end of a long day. It's a beautiful day outside, so I'm glad you're here. We have a small but mighty group, and we're going to have some fun together. Our time will go by quickly, and I hope that we can really reinforce some of the themes and some of the ideas that you've already heard throughout the day today. So I'll say a bit more about myself and my story in a moment, but just to give you a quick context of where we're headed, we're going to talk a little bit about improvisation. We're going to define improvisation from a leadership perspective, and I'm going to introduce you to a framework to maybe dig a little bit deeper into that concept. We'll think about some practices that you can put into place to really test this out in terms of your leadership style and approach, and then we'll think about how does this apply to your teams, your work, and the culture of those that you're leading. We'll do that in an hour, we'll have some fun, and then we'll go out and hit the cruise or whatever it is that you have on your agenda for the rest of the day. But I want to start with 3 questions. So question number 1, this is the interactive part of the session. Hello for the folks who are joining us online. If you do share, which I hope you will, we'll pass the mics along just so, I know we can probably all hear each other in the room, but we want to make sure that anyone watching us online can also hear. So question number 1, think about the last 3 years and the change, the chaos, the volatility that we all experienced. What are some ways in which you might describe the behaviors of your team when they've been under pressure, when they've been facing chaos? And these can be positive things or less positive things or most likely a mix of all of them. But what are some things that you would describe your team when they've been under pressure? Creative, all right. Collaborative. Remarkable, okay. Passionate. Frustrated. Confused, okay. Tired, yeah, we've all felt that one. Agile, okay, I like that. Flexible, okay. Any others? All right, question number 2. When you hear the word improvisation, what are the first images that come to mind? These may be pop culture images or images from your own experience or images from your work. What are the things that come to mind when you hear the word improvisation?
Stand-up comedy.
Stand-up comedy, okay, that's a good one.
Icebreakers.
What's that? Icebreakers, like those cheesy things that extroverts like me make you do at the beginning of a session. Yes, I'm married to an introvert, so we've learned to manage, so I respect all the introverts in the room. If you even made it into a room about improvisation, then I give you a lot of credit. What's that?
Change, like improvising on things. That's what comes
Change, right, so improvising, like iterating time after time. Any others that come to mind? MacGyver, yeah. So we MacGyver our little our problems and our tools. Any other things that come to mind? Improvisation. Those are good ones. So imagine a leader, and this leader improvises 24/7, from the second they wake up in the morning till the second they go to bed. Every interaction you have with them is improvisational. So describe to me the behaviors of that leader and what it's like to work with or work for that leader. Improvising 24/7, all the time.
Unpredictable.
Unpredictable, okay. Stressful. Exhausting.
Exciting.
Chaotic. Exciting, okay. What are some others? What was that one?
Had chaotic too.
Chaotic.
Unstructured.
Unstructured, okay. So I've asked this question to lots and lots of leaders in lots of different environments over the years, and generally speaking, the concept of a leader who's constantly improvising gets like a medium to kind of thumbs down reaction. Pretty consistent in this room, and is maybe even slightly more negative in this room. And as I'm with audiences with more and more senior level people, how do you think they feel about improvisational leaders the higher we get up into the C-suite? It goes up? Oh, it goes down. It goes down. Those high-powered, impressive executives are not feeling that idea of an improvisational leader. So we'll get back to that in a moment. Now, if you come to a session on improvisation, do you think that the guy standing in the front of the room is going to ask you to improvise at all? Did you have any sense of that? Maybe just a little? All right, so, you're like, I sat up here, and he clearly can see me. I'm not really protected. So here's what we're going to do. I've made this mistake before, I'll confess. In the past, I would speak for 20 minutes, 30 minutes about all the beauty of improv, and then I'd finally ask people to improvise. And what do you think was going through their heads in that 20 or 30 minutes before I asked them to actually improvise? What's that?
Yeah, they're like, oh, why did I sit here?
They're freaking out, right? In the back of their head, they're like, when is that terrible moment going to happen? So let's just get it over with. And I promise you that in about 2 to 3 minutes from now, you will all be improvisers, and the only one who will feel embarrassed is probably going to be me, okay? So this is a safe exercise where no one's going to be singled out. But go ahead and stand up for me real quick. And for those of you who are following along with us online, you can do all these things as well. So a big part of improvisation is the link between our mind and our body and our spirits. So we're going to do a quick little exercise where all I want you to do is just change the center of your gravity. So some people hold their center like in their heels, some people hold it maybe up in their shoulders or in their belly. So what I want you to do is imagine the center of your energy and lift it up to the top of your head, and then imagine a string that is pulling your head way up into the sky. And just in the space that you're in, just kind of walk around a little bit. How does that change your posture and change the way you feel? Okay, so now shift the center of your energy down into your heels. Put all of your gravity into your heels and just walk around. You can vocalize a little bit if you just kind of, what might a person be saying to themselves? And then go ahead and lift the center of your energy into your right shoulder. So all the energy is in your right shoulder. Go ahead and just move around just a little bit like that. All right? And then go ahead and shift it right here into the center of your body. And take a breath. All right, you did it. You're not done yet. We're going to do a 10-second exercise. Okay? Look around the room. And in just 10 seconds, all you need to do is point to something in the room and then name it something other than what it is. So what is this? It's a chair. This is a chair, right? But I might call it an elephant or a Mercedes. You got it? So the only thing you can't call what you point to is what it actually is. Does that make sense? All right, 10 seconds. Ready? Go. All right. Let's hear it. Call it out. Call it out. Go ahead.
Floor.
Yeah?
I lost my word.
4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, good, good. All right. One more thing for us. So I'm going to give you a script, and we're going to act it out. I'll be character 1, and you'll be character 2. Okay? And here's the script. I'm going to say hello, and you're all going to say hi. Then I'm going to say, how are you? And you're going to say, fine. And I'm going to say, see you later. And you're going to say, bye. You got that? Your script is hi, fine, bye. All right, so let's just try it in a neutral way. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, hey, there we go. Someone online. That was beautiful. How are you? Fine.
How are you?
See you later. All right, good job. So give us a relationship to have with one another. It could be a warm relationship or a less warm relationship that we might have between each other. I'll give you one. We're long-lost college friends. We haven't seen each other in 20 years. Okay, ready? So embody that character. We were the best buds in college, and we haven't seen each other in a long time. Ready? Hello. Hi. How are you? Fine. See you later? All right, great. Okay, one more time. Imagine we were business partners and things went really bad. And we sued each other for millions of dollars and bankrupted ourselves, and we're now like really down and out, and we're just walking down the street and we happen to run into each other. Ready? Okay. Hello. Hi. How are you? Fine. See you later. Bye. Oh, cold. All right, give yourselves a round of applause. Good job. You can sit down. And I love to hear folks chiming in online as well, so thanks for that. So when I tell people they're going to improvise, or when I ask them if they have ever improvised, what do you think they often will say? No, they'll say no. When I say, hey, have you ever improvised, or do you like to improvise, what do people say to me? They say, no way. I don't want to improvise, I've never improvised, and I can't improvise. But what do they really mean when they say they can't improvise? What they mean is that they're afraid to improvise. And so many times when we talk about doing something unscripted, not being sure what might come next, it's really about fear. It's the fear of being exposed, the fear of being embarrassed. And when you think about it in a leadership context, it's often the image that I have created and chosen to project to all of you is in danger if I kind of step out of my comfort zone, if I expose myself, if maybe I risk being embarrassed. So you can't really talk about improvisation without talking about fear, and frankly, you can't talk about leadership without talking about fear as well. We face fear all the time. It's a question of how we respond to it, and we'll get more into that in a moment. And then the other thing, which you've already hit on, that people think about when they hear about improvisation is maybe this image or some other similar ones. I'm getting a thumbs up? Yeah. All right, so who are these folks on the screen?
Whose line is it anyway?
So this is Whose Line Is It Anyway? So if you're into if you've seen improvisation on TV, you've probably seen Whose Line Is It Anyway? So when I tell people I teach improvisation and leadership, unfortunately, this is the image that often comes into people's minds. Now, we like this show. It makes us laugh. They're amazingly talented. Do you want these three gentlemen leading your organization during a time of crisis or stress? Do you want people's lives to be on the line with these folks up here on the screen? Maybe, but probably not. And maybe we'll reorient ourselves to what that image is a bit as well. And then here's one more for you. This is Tina Fey. You probably know who Tina Fey is. One of my comedy and improv icons. And I love this quote from her book, Bossy Pants. Has anyone read her book? Really great book just about her story, but also about leadership and the different roles that she's played. So she talks about how improvisation for her wasn't just a job, wasn't just something that she did for fun, but actually became a way of life. She met her husband. It really changed the trajectory of her life. And if you're going to join a cult, it's not too bad of a cult to join. Now, this quote really resonates with me as well. So as Christian mentioned during the intro, I went to college at the University of Maryland, who just a couple of hours ago won their game. Any Terps in the room? So your Terp? All right, great. The online folks are happy as well. It was a great game. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I decided to do a double major in theater and communication. And I felt like 2 worthless degrees were better than 1, and for some reason, that seemed like a good idea. My first job out of college was as an actor, and then I moved to Chicago, where I studied and performed improvisational theater, and that's really the place to do improvisational theater. It's a long story, but I found my way into the healthcare space when I came back to the DC area with a company called the Advisory Board. And I didn't know anything about healthcare at all, but they trained me on their speeches and they sent me on the road. Cindy and I probably met each other 20 years ago when I had no idea what I was talking about giving one of those speeches. So we have I was doing it well. That's right. So that's how I made my way into healthcare. And then I eventually got some of those real degrees, my MHA, my black belt in Lean Six Sigma, my fellowship in ACHE, all that kind of stuff. And I moved into a healthcare leadership role at GW Hospital and Christiana Care. And so I thought to myself, I was letting go of all that actor stuff, all that improv stuff, and I was playing the role of a healthcare executive. But then I started to realize something, which was that all these other healthcare executives that I met that were playing that role, I felt like there was something that might have been missing just a little bit. It felt sometimes artificial. It felt sometimes like it was lacking in that human personal connection that was needed. And I started to introduce some of these things I had learned around improvisation with the teams that I was leading and the people I was working with, and it really resonated with them. And I recognized that rather than just like throw away that part of my life, it was an integral part that helped to make me different in the way that I could show up, in the way I could lead, in the way that I could engage others. So about 2 years ago, I left playing the role of healthcare executive, and I formed my company, Threefold Yes. And so I work with individuals, with teams, with organizations, and really helping them to thrive in the work that they do. And I do it by combining the science of improvement and some of the traditional forms of management that we all know with the art of improvisation. And I found that that's been really a powerful way to engage people that really resonates. So that's my story, and it's the way that improv, even if I've said goodbye to it multiple times in my life, has stuck with me and followed with me over the years. So if you took an improv course, Improv 101, what's the first lesson that you might learn? And here's a hint. It was the title of today's presentation. What's the first phrase that you learn when you learn improvisation? Yes, and. Two really, really simple words we've all said a million times. So what does yes and mean? Yeah.
Like validating something and adding something else.
So we validate and we add something to it. Do we like that definition? I like it, right? So we say, yes, we accept the offer that the person is giving, and then we add to it and we do something more. And so that's what they teach you in improv. You say yes and you add to it. It sounds really simple. When people learn this lesson, they often run with it. And what's the opposite of yes and? Well, it's no, no but, all those types of things. And we know people who say yes and a lot, and we know people who say no but a lot as well in our personal lives and our professional lives. Now, are there any brave volunteers in the room who would like to do a really simple exercise up here with me? I know the pressure is on. You want to come up and do one? All right, come on up. All right, come on. You're on stage. We cleared the table out.
I didn't agree to a mic.
So my name's Mike. What's your name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer, nice to meet you, Jennifer. All right, so we're just going to demonstrate the concept of yes and. This is going to be really simple. And I promise, if someone looks bad, it's definitely going to be me in this exercise. So we're going to start by doing the opposite of yes and. And we're just going to have a conversation back and forth.
Okay.
And I'm going to say something, and then you'll just say no, and you'll just go in a totally different direction. And then I'll say no back to you, and we'll do that back and forth a few different times.
Okay.
Does that sound all right?
Sure.
So Jennifer, right?
Mm-hmm.
What should Jennifer and I talk about? Something normal, not like, don't try to be funny. Just give us a normal thing that humans would talk about. Traffic. Beautiful. Well, I heard traffic first. We'll get to that one. So go ahead and start.
So it was heavy traffic coming in today, huh?
No, I mean, traffic was fine for me. I just zipped right in.
No, I got stuck behind a bunch of different cars in multiple locations.
No, I just kind of zipped around. I know all the secret entrances and pathways, so it was pretty easy.
No, are you sure you really did that?
And scene. All right, good job. Let's give a hand to Jennifer. Okay, so no, not yet. So now we're going to do one more. What's one other conversation we might be able to have with each other? The weather. We love to talk about the weather. So for this one, all we're going to do is go back and forth just like we did.
Okay.
But this time we'll say yes, and we'll just add to it. And so instead of negating or kind of going away from the thing we talked about, we'll just build on our conversation back and forth.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, do you want to start?
Sure. What a lovely day we're having.
Yes, it is a lovely day. And I walked by that beautiful battleship, and it was amazing.
Yes, I was going to do that earlier. It looks so cool.
Yeah, it was great. I didn't want to buy a ticket, so I just kind of jumped over the fence and swam over to it.
Yes, I love that energy. Maybe I should do that too.
I wouldn't recommend it because I almost missed this. Yes, you should do that too. I'll come bail you out of jail just like I needed someone to do for me.
Yes, I love that. I didn't know who I was going to call.
And scene. Good job. All right, let's give Jennifer a round of applause. All right, so kind of artificial to do the no thing and then to do the yes thing. But could you picture a loved one or a coworker in either one of those interactions that we just had?
Yes.
We all know people who kind of lead with the no. And we know people who lead with the yes. And in my personal life, and certainly in my professional life, I've realized more and more how drawn I am to those yes and people. It's not necessarily about the words they say, it's about the spirit that they bring to their work. And those no but people that negate, deflect, kind of misdirect everything can just kill your energy and kill your sense of joy in the work that you do. So the nice thing is this is simple. You can do the exercise with your team and maybe actually get them oriented around the way they think about their work or the way they think about the interactions they have with one another. But I've noticed something. I've seen a number of organizations who say, yes and is the way we work. Yes and is our culture. We love to say yes and. Does anyone have organizations that say yes and all the time? But here's what I've seen. Two people talking in an organization that loves yes and the one person says something and the other person says yes, and they pull the conversation totally in another direction around the thing they really want to be talking about. Or two people are talking and a person is expressing their point of view, and often men, but not always, will say yes and right in the middle of someone's sentence before they even finish getting their point across. And probably the most egregious at all that I've unfortunately seen a number of times is the most senior person in the room is listening to someone talk, and then suddenly they say yes and in a way that clearly means shut up and don't talk again. Has anyone felt that one? And so you hear the words said again and again and again, but sometimes it doesn't quite have the effect that we want and could actually have a harmful effect on our teams and on our culture. And so when I started to appreciate this and loved hearing it said, but concerned about how it was being used, I realized that there's a lot more to this simple phrase than just those two words, and you can't just say it. You have to actually explore it in a deeper way. And so I've created with a colleague, Christy Pintar, known to some of the folks in the room, a model for leadership around this phrase, yes and. And there are 3 steps to an effective yes, 3 steps to an effective and the comma in the middle and the ellipsis at the end also have a role to play in saying yes and. Now, this is the type of workshop that I do in a half-day session with teams over multiple days at a time. And so we're going to do a flyover of this model, and I'll give you just a little bit of a taste of some of the different pieces of what makes an effective yes and. And there's so much more to dig into and explore when you're thinking about this. So first, what makes an effective yes? The first step to an effective yes is to yes yourself. I was in a meeting years ago. I was walking into the room, and one of my work kind of frenemies was leading this meeting. And I was not feeling great about it. I wasn't feeling good about my place in the world. And I thought there was going to be maybe 10 people in the room, and I walk into the room, and there's like 50 people. And there's outside organization, and my energy was all wrong. And it was, I usually wasn't like this, right? But it was important to me to be at the table in a way that showed my status and my position in the organization. But there weren't any seats. And so I walked around kind of looking for a seat, even though clearly there was none, until people took the cues from me that, oh, this guy who has this title wants to seat at this spot. And then everyone started kind of shuffling in that awkward thing that happens, and like they made a space for me. And I sat there, and then all of a sudden I realized, like, oh my gosh, like I'm a complete idiot. Like, why did I do that, right? We've probably all had those moments where I did not acknowledge the energy I was bringing into the room. I didn't yes myself. And so any kind of yes and approach to leadership that I wanted to bring to that room had really been obliterated. And hopefully I could be forgiven for that little lapse. But those are the types of moments that again and again and again become the way that you and we are perceived as leaders if we're not able to say yes to ourselves and our energy coming into a situation. So what am I feeling? Like, what is my body physically feeling as I'm walking into this room? Am I feeling sore hamstring? Maybe I didn't get a good night's sleep. Maybe I exercised earlier and I'm full of energy. What happened right before this interaction that I'm bringing into the room? Maybe I had a fight with my spouse. Maybe I just got promoted. Maybe my kid just made me laugh as I'm walking into this interaction, physically or online. And then how do I feel about the folks that I'm about to interact with? Maybe I'm about to see someone I love to be with. Maybe I'm about to meet someone that I don't totally trust. And simply going through something like that, acknowledging how you're feeling physically, acknowledging what you're bringing into the room, acknowledging your intention or thoughts about the interaction you're about to have, can have a radical difference in the yes that you're about to have. And just like, I'm sure there's some process improvement experts in the room here, when you have a flaw at the beginning of a process, what happens to that flaw as it moves through the process? It gets worse and worse and worse. It grows exponentially. So getting this part of the cycle of yes and right is really, really important. And then there's another big piece to saying yes to yourself, which has to do with the role of status. So this is a picture of Keith Johnstone, who is probably my kind of most revered improvisational teacher and legend. And he actually just passed away this past Saturday at the age of 90. So I'm kind of remembering him, and I'm happy to be able to kind of, in his honor, kind of share his wisdom with you today. And he wrote a book called Impro, which is like in my Bible of books that I read regularly throughout my life, usually once every year or so. And it talks about improvisation, but he really talks about how humans interact with one another. And he spends about 30% of the beginning of the book talking about status. And you can see the quote up here on the screen. And the idea here is that human beings are often talking about things. How are we going to get the program to this community that we want to serve? I've heard versions of that a lot today. But when you're in the meeting with the team, what's really happening? It's transactions of status. Who has a higher status? Who has a lower status? Who's asserting their dominance? And who may be kind of backing off a little bit. And what Keith Johnstone recognized is that when actors were having trouble learning how to improvise and it just seemed inauthentic and awkward, all you needed to do was to teach them to play a game with status, to play a little bit of a higher status than the person they're with, or to play a little bit of a lower status, and then suddenly, magically, it just came to life. And the reason why that works is because it's how we're wired as humans. We're constantly playing the game of status. We're checking our status against one another, and especially in our professional environments, it plays a huge role in the interactions that we have. And so when we yes ourselves, if we are simply able to recognize the status that we're choosing to play and the status that others are playing, it can really change the interaction and the dynamic we have with one another. And so I like to play a game where I think of status on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest status you can possibly play, and then 10 being the most regal high status that you can possibly play. And I'll look around a room and I'll just kind of put numbers above everyone's head. And when you start to like see the status game being played, it can be very powerful in the way that we interact. So this is another volunteer opportunity. Do I have any brave volunteers who want to do a fun little exercise with me around this topic? Jennifer's like, I'm just going to have to volunteer every time, right?
Go ahead.
Fiona? Right? I have that right?
Yeah.
All right, come on up. She kind of got voluntold earlier, but
I figure I'd just volunteer at some point.
All right. Well, Fiona, great to be up here with you. I don't ever force anyone to come up on stage with me. So if you don't want to come up on stage, I promise you I'm not going to force you. So we're going to have another interaction kind of like we had before, but we're just going to play a game of status. Okay? So we're just going to do the simplest thing that we've all done a million times. We're going to have a boss-employee conversation. I'll be the boss, and you can be the employee.
Okay.
All right, and I'll start with a status of an 8, so pretty high, and you can start with a status of, let's say, 3.
Okay.
Pretty low status. And we're going to have a normal boss-employee conversation. Can anyone suggest a type of thing a boss and an employee might talk about? Attendance. All right, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. What status are you? You're
3.
I'm an 8. Okay. Ready? And scene. Fiona, I need to talk to you about your attendance.
Okay.
You've been late the last couple of days, you took PTO for a day, but you were gone for a week. What's going on?
Nothing.
Nothing? Well, I'm going to need to see your performance really improve and maybe double your time if you want to keep your job.
Okay.
I think this conversation is over.
Okay.
And scene. All right. Good job. That was great. That was great. Okay, so now we're going to do it one more time. But this time we're going to flip our status. Okay? So I will have a status of 3, and you will have a status, let's dial it up to a 9.2.
Okay.
All right? So you're a 9.2 and I'm a 3, and I'm still the boss and she's the employee. What is something we're going to talk about? Normal thing, boss employee. Pay. Okay. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Hey, Fiona. Can we talk about your raise for this year?
Oh, my raise.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to.
Oh, great. What would you like?
Oh, I'd like $1 million. Thank
$1 million.
you.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I don't know if we can afford that, but you know what? I'm gonna cut my salary. I'm gonna cut my salary to at least help to fund that. Does that sound okay with
That's
you?
fantastic. I love that. Thank you.
Are you happy with like your PTO and 401k and everything?
Oh, no, I'll take some more of that too.
Okay,
yeah, you can double that too.
Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna, you know, I love working. I'm gonna transfer all of my 401k into yours.
Fantastic. That'd be great.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Do you mind? Okay. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, scene. All right, let's hear it for Fiona. Good job. So what do we learn from that little exercise? What are the takeaways? Fiona's a good improviser. We learned that, right? So the first scene, kind of normal, right? Kind of jerky boss, meek employee, giving her a hard time. Not that funny. Second scene was more humorous. Why? Right? So we flipped the expectation around the boss and the employee dynamic. And so you have this high status employee, low status boss, and all of a sudden the boss is transferring his 401k and cutting his salary and doing everything he can. And so we've flipped our expectations around the status dynamic, and it created humor. And you're not doing it to be funny, but we're actually playing that game. Yes?
So you're saying status and position or role in your organizational structure aren't the same thing?
They are not the same thing. Yes, thank you so much for calling that out. So your title is your positional status and authority, but you can actually play whatever status that you want in the way that we just did. And I bet you know executives who play at a 10, but you probably know people who have like more of a frontline type of role who also play at like an 8 or a 9 or a 10, and they have this outsized power in their organization that sometimes makes you scratch your head. And then you also may know the opposite. And this is another one where just this topic, we could go on for quite a while because it's so important in team culture and creating a healthy team dynamic. So if I'm the CEO and I play at a status of 9 or 10 pretty much all the time, what do you think the culture is around me? What's that?
Everybody's playing low, right? Everybody's playing low.
Everyone's playing low, right? So are people going to tell me when things are wrong?
No, they're going to be yes people.
They're going to be yes people, right? If I'm making a fool of myself or doing something stupid, are people going to kind of help me out and let me know? No. And so the lesson here, again, and I could go on and on about this one, but to yes ourselves effectively is to acknowledge the status that we play. And if you have a higher positional title in the organization, it is your obligation to be even more sensitive to this. And in most cases, not all, dialing your status down a little bit as you enter a situation is a way to actually raise the status of others in the room and level the playing field and to set up an effective yes and an improvisational moment for the teams that you lead. And similarly, if you have a lower kind of title in the organization, there's ways that you can amp up your status and to create a little more space for yourself. But that's a complicated thing that we can get into a little bit more. But if your organizational title is high, dial your status back and you can see the impact that it might have. And then there's times when you actually need to really dial your status up to have the desired impact, to take the stand that is necessary. And you'll know what to do when the time is right, and that's one of the things we'll get to at the end. All right, we've got to keep going here. We've got to get through all this yes and stuff. So we already practiced. The second part of an effective yes, and I see a couple of you taking notes on this, and that's great. There's also a little worksheet that's in the handout or online, and these slides will be available to all of you as well. So we establish ourselves in the present moment. Just like the example I gave to you earlier, I walked into that room. I wasn't in the moment. I was kind of thinking about some other stuff. I was thinking about my frenemy at the front of the room, and I wasn't present. And so there's some really simple things that we can do to be in the present moment. And I'll give you two of them real quick, and then we can chat about some others. So the first one, this is a little piece of calligraphy from a Buddhist monk named Thich Nhat Hanh. Anyone familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh? Yeah, I see a smile. Anyone who knows Thich Nhat Hanh is going to smile. And it says, this moment is full of wonders. And so really internalizing that, this is something, I have a piece of calligraphy in my office at home, really knowing that this moment that we're in right now is full of gifts and wonders can really set us in the right course. So I'll give you just a 1-minute little meditation that I like to do before I enter an interaction with folks, or sometimes in the middle of challenging conversations. I'll actually do this meditation in my head. So you can just, it won't make you stand up. You can just kind of center yourselves. You can close your eyes if you want. You don't have to. And just breathe in and breathe out. And breathe in and breathe out. We breathe in and we smile. We breathe out and we release. We breathe in and we acknowledge the present moment. We breathe out, we acknowledge wonderful moment. In, out, smile, release, present moment, wonderful moment. All right, you can open your eyes. So that's a simple one that you can do. It takes 10, 15 seconds before you turn on your camera, before you walk into the room, and it really helps us to establish ourselves in the present moment. And there have been a lot of times when I've been in really difficult conversations with people that maybe I'm not loving in the moment, but I'm able to just smile, I'm able to release, I'm able to acknowledge the present moment, and that it's even a wonderful moment, even dealing with that person who I can picture in my eyes right now. And it changes the way you interact, it changes the way you show up. It doesn't mean that suddenly you're soft and you're going to yield to whatever interaction you're having. It actually, oftentimes when I do these things, I'm much stronger and more effective in the interaction that I'm having. There's one more that I'll give you from a book called Leadership Dojo. This is a good one to stand up if you don't mind. You're not going to have to talk or do anything. But it seems like a good time to stand up at this point in the presentation. So a conference is a great place to observe this, but when we're interacting in groups, in a conference setting or any kind of group setting, how do we often hold our bodies? Some of you are doing it now, right? So a lot of times we cross our arms, like we'll kind of like close our legs and cross our legs maybe. We'll kind of turn ourselves away. I'm exaggerating just a bit, but not too much. So you'll watch people interacting with each other, and they're kind of like partially interacting, but all their energy is away from each other. And so a simple thing you can do from this book, The Leadership Dojo, are these 5 steps. And so the first one is we center, right? 2 feet on the ground, shoulders apart, arms at your side. The next thing we do is we face. What's your name? Joe. Joe? Hi, Joe. I'm not going to make you talk. You're good. Oh, you just did? That's right. So I'm facing Joe directly. And then we extend. We extend our energy out. So give that a try. This is just totally in your head and in your spirit, right? Imagine your energy kind of focused in to your body. And now imagine your energy extended out. You don't have to do it physically, just with kind of your spirit that you're offering out. And then we enter, which is we step towards the person. And you may step towards them physically, or you may just step towards them in the energy that you're bringing. And then we blend. And this is a lot of times goes with mirroring and the way we reflect the energy back to one another. So we center, we face, We extend, we enter, and we blend. And you can go ahead and sit. But thanks, Joe. You get credit for volunteering. I once met a leader who I'd known for a long time, and she was interviewing for a job, and it was a big role. And she walked in the room, and the energy from her was radically different, and I couldn't tell what it was. And like months later, I said, something was strange about that moment, but what was going on? And she said, this is what she was doing. And when I've taught this to leaders, just centering and facing and extending, just if you do those three things, it can have a powerful impact in terms of your presence, how you're perceived, and people will ask you, like, did you get a haircut or something, or what's going on? But just the way you carry yourself goes a long way. And in the conference, when you're out on the cruise tonight or tomorrow, just practice this. And notice when you're like having a little chat with someone and you're closing your body off, and you're not facing, you're not extending your energy. If you just simply do those things, people are going to respond to you different, and you'll be ready to respond differently as well. So final step in an effective yes is to shut up and listen, right? So part of that is listening to words, but it's also listening to some other things as well. Let's do a quick little exercise. Take a look at this and just take note of everything you see on this picture. All right, what are some things that were in that picture? Just shout them out. A person? A bench, yes. Water. Leaves, tree. Letter C. Fence, buildings. Cell phone, okay. All that stuff made sense. I heard the letter C. Did anyone see the letter C in that picture? Let's take another look. Did you see the letter C in that picture? The giant blue letter C in the middle of the picture? So this comes from a book called Visual Intelligence, which is a really amazing book. And about 30 to 40% of audiences generally see the big giant C right in front of their faces. And they see the person, they see the bench, they see a tree, but the big C, for some reason, it just goes right past us. And so the point here in Shut Up and Listen is that, yes, we need to listen to the words that people say, and there are a bunch of different activities that we can do to learn how to listen better to the words that people say. But a big part of listening goes far beyond just the words and goes beyond our ability to take in what's in front of us and what we're perceiving. Yes?
So for someone like me who was so focused on what is that dark thing with the, is that like a building? Is that what? I couldn't see the sea. So does that mean that I have zero skills?
It means that you are a bad person. That's what. No, of course not. Of course, it doesn't mean you have no skills. It means that that you're lasering in on one spot, but you're maybe missing some of the other signals. And that's not a bad thing, because you're a human, and every single person in this room is guilty of this at different times. And that's kind of the point, right? So I'll give you another quick one. This is an exercise you can take with you. So go ahead and close your eyes. Ready? Don't cheat. This one you have to do. Someone shout out what my shirt looks like. Blue. My shirt's blue? All right, we'll see. Someone tell me how many microphones are up here. Two microphones, okay. How many speaker kind of tower things are up here? All right, go ahead and open your eyes. So my shirt is blue. It also is pink. There's 3 microphones up here, and there's 1 speaker tower. And so this is a little game called the noticing game. I play this game all the time, particularly with my 12-year-old who loves to play this game. So if you're trying to get, if you have kids or younger folks in your life and you want to get the phones down, just play the noticing game. Just be in a room, look around, close your eyes, and it's amazing what we don't notice. And so if you just play the noticing game with yourself, suddenly your ability to listen and perceive and hear and pick things up gets increased. And I bet you'll be able to hear the words that people are saying if you've done these little things. Remember when I made you do that incredibly awkward thing where you had to point to stuff and say something other than what it is? So that's from Keith Johnstone as well. And he's shown that it really widens your perception when you start pointing around the room and calling things something other than what they are. And so there's little things that you can do for yourself or for your team to really focus people's attention and get them ready to shut up and listen. All right? So we just got through the yes. The clock is ticking, but I promise you we'll get through it all. What comes after yes? Wrong. Comma. Correct. Comma. Possibly one of the most important pieces of this is the comma. We get to the comma, and we embrace the pause. And so the comma is really important. And I know people who don't seem to be aware that commas exist. Like they just plow from sentence to sentence without ever taking a breath. I see some nodding heads here. So that pause is really important, and it's something that's almost imperceptible, but people who are really good at embracing the pause of the comma, you can kind of just feel it. And particularly when it comes to acknowledging the bias we may be bringing into a conversation or an interaction, instead of just leaping in to the yes that we're about to the and that we're about to offer, it's that millisecond where we pause, we breathe, we check ourselves, and we make sure that the and we're about to offer is what is really needed in that moment. So this comes from Vanderbilt University. They have a program around eliminating and acknowledging our everyday bias, and there's this great acronym around what it means to pause. We take a breath before we act on the situation. So this is one that I'll leave with you to kind of think about and digest. And then another thought leader that I really admire is Dr. Howard Stevenson. He's at Penn Medicine, and he's done a lot of work on the idea of racial stress and how people react to moments of racial stress. And so he has this framework, calculating, locating, and communicating. And he gives an example of a parent and a teacher having a difficult conversation about a student. And so that's a hard enough conversation, but imagine that those two are of different races, and there's some of the tension associated with that present in the conversation. It can make a difficult conversation even more fraught and even more likely to go off the rails. And so Dr. Stevenson teaches this model for calculating where that stress is that we're feeling physically in our body, locating it, and then using those types of things. Is my stress at a 1 or a 10? Where am I feeling that stress? And then how am I going to interact? How am I going to incorporate that into the communication that I'm about to offer? So again, lots more to say about this, but the work he has done around how people respond to racial stress is essentially teaching people to improvise, teaching people to embrace the pause before they launch into their and he's really kind of through his work demonstrated how it can help potentially fraught situations to be resolved, de-escalated, and have a much more positive interaction and outcome. So embracing the pause is really, really important, and it's something to practice in terms of just taking a breath before you speak, or you can look into some of these other models to kind of address some of the more complicated approaches to embracing that pause. So we embrace the pause, and we get to an and. The first step of an effective and is to add a brick. So this is the final, for the sake of time, this is the final exercise that I'd like to do. I have one more brave volunteer.
Okay,
All right, you do it. Come on up. There we go. Remind me of your name again.
Lisa.
Lisa. All right, so Lisa and I are going to tell, come on over. Lisa and I are going to tell a story. And so the idea here, when we get to our and, is that we add a brick and not a cathedral. So this is a beautiful phrase that they teach in improvisation, which I love. Do you know people who bring cathedrals into the room? So what's a cathedral? It's beautiful. It's fully built. It's almost immobile, right? It's going to be here forever. And that's what a lot of us do as leaders. We bring a cathedral into the room, but what's really often required is that we bring a brick. Now, a brick is much more humble. It's not as fancy. It doesn't maybe make us look as cool as leaders, but oftentimes we just need to bring a brick and then allow someone else to offer their brick, and then the structure that gets built is built brick by brick, one at a time. It may not look like that cathedral, but it's often what is required in the moment that people are having. So there's a fun little improv game called a one-word story. So we're going to tell a story together real quick, okay? So Lisa and I, Lisa, right? I got a lot of things going on in my head here, Lisa. Are going to tell a story one word at a time. We're going to add it brick by brick. So give us a story, Gemma, the title of the story. Oh, I called on you, but I know you, so.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say a day in the life, but I don't know.
Well, day in the life, all right. Day in the life in Norfolk, Virginia. So I'll offer a word, and then you'll offer a word, and we'll go back and forth word by word. Once
I,
went
outside,
to
the,
waterfront,
and,
saw
something,
magnificent,
but,
then
it,
got
huge,
and
scary.
so
I,
ran
fast,
to.
mommy.
Good job. Let's give Lisa a round of applause. Great job. Thank you. So one word story is the simplest way you can test out the idea of brick by brick. But there's a deeper thing here, right? And I saw some of you definitely tracking with this. The higher up we go, the bigger our titles get, the more important we are. We sometimes feel the need to prove how smart we are, how capable we are, how much we know. And when you play the role of a healthcare executive, you've got to know things, you've got to direct. And just offering a brick is often really, really hard, especially when you get to a certain place in your life and your career. And it actually takes a lot of courage to simply offer a brick and create space for others to add theirs. But often the and that is created collectively with the team is going to be much better and much more impactful. So the next step in an effective and is that there are no mistakes, there are only gifts. We heard this at the beautiful keynote at lunch today, and a lot of the themes that she talked about I heard as in an improvisational way, and I think about these principles. So this is a quote from Del Close. If we treat each other as geniuses, artists, and poets, we are much more likely to become that on stage. So this idea of no mistakes, only gifts is really powerful in our orientation towards when things do go wrong, that we take them as gifts that we can learn from. But it's also about our orientation towards one another. And if I think of you as a genius, if I think of you as a poet, I'm going to receive the energy I get from you in a much more positive way than if I come into it thinking that you kind of don't know what you're talking about and I'm just trying to get through this interaction. So part of this comes from when things go wrong, how we receive this, and part of this comes from how we interact with others. So we won't have time for it today, but there's a fun little exercise you can do where you simply have a conversation back and forth and someone rings a bell randomly during the conversation. And whatever it is that you just said, you have to say something else or something different. And it forces you to constantly be on your toes and to redirect yourself in multiple different ways. And then the final step in an effective and is to do something. This is a quote from kind of an unlikely improvisational source. This is Bruce Lee. He created a theory of martial arts that he called Jeet Kune Do. He learned all the different martial arts, and then he threw them all away. And he just responded in the moment with whatever was required. And at that time, people were very kind of legalistic about one form of martial arts versus the other. So what he was doing was radical. But what he talks about is that in the moment, whatever is required will manifest itself. And that's what happens when we have an effective yes and. The thing that we need to do will show up. And that might be saying the words yes and, though not always. It might be saying a very firm no. Or in many cases, it might be simply silence and creating space for whatever is required to happen next. And there are some other fun exercises we can do with that, of simply just getting out of our skin. Here's one that you can take with you, which we won't do today, but it's called 8 Things. You get in a group, you name a category, let's say cars, and one person just has to name 8 categories of cars, and once they do that, everyone cheers and applauds. It sounds really simple, right? I've done this with 5th graders, and I've done it with executives. Who do you think has a harder time with that exercise? Executives, right? Because we're having that fear reflex. We don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to be made to feel awkward. The fifth graders, it's an easy exercise for them to do. But just forcing yourself to do something, to say something, to respond in the moment, and then cheering when we do, it creates an environment where it's okay to take that step forward, to say what needs to be said. And then finally, we let it go. That's the ellipsis at the end. We've set our brick, we've offered our and then we step back and we let it go. So in the time that we have left, I just want to give you a reframing of the word improvisation and the connection to leadership. So you thought about a leader who's always improvising as kind of chaotic, kind of a mess, kind of stressful to work with. But I would argue that my definition in this context is that to improvise is to demonstrate activated, courageous mindfulness. And that leaders who are constantly demonstrating activated, courageous mindfulness are the types of leaders we want to be around. And frankly, I would argue that you should challenge yourself to be the type of leader who is improvising all the time using this point of view. And so here is the whole model kind of put together in one spot. And again, these slides are available to you. We have an effective yes. We honor and embrace the pause. We offer our and we let it go. And again, if you're a performance improvement expert, you think of this as a process and a cycle happening hundreds and hundreds and thousands of times a day. And how do we create culture? We don't create culture by posters or beautiful statements. We create culture moment to moment in how we interact with one another, in how we listen and respond. And it's all those moments, all those little behaviors that we offer to one another, that our team offers to themselves, that our team then reflects to the other teams that they interact with, that create the culture of the organization. And so I hope that you have learned a little bit about becoming an improvisational leader today. I hope you can take some of these with you to help your teams become more improvisational. The worksheet in the app gives you a little space to reflect on, what does this mean in terms of how I might apply it? What does this mean in terms of how my team may embrace these things? And how might I describe an improvisational leader to someone else? And then we'll do just a final practice. Everyone can stand up. So this is another one coming from kind of the Buddhist Zen perspective. But we take a breath. We center ourselves. Imagine that a little bird, you're holding it right in front of you. Just take a deep breath, and then breathe out, and we let it go. Try that with me one more time. Ready? Hold your hands out. Just take a breath, and let it go. So this is another one. You can go ahead and sit. This is another good one to do at the end of a long day, end of a tough meeting, and at the end of a yes and, as we get ready to launch in to our next yes and. So thanks so much for your time today. I hope you have a wonderful event tonight, and then final end to your conference. I love talking to people about their leadership journeys, the work of their teams, the culture of their organization. So if you want to hear more about the work that I've been doing, and particularly this concept of improvisational leadership, I would love to connect online or after the session today as well. So thank you so much, and have a great day.